All right, I'll call this meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. Kelsey, she's approved. Glenn, he'll be a little bit late. Merle. Here. Blake.
Here.
Jenny. Here. Crystal Chair here. If you'll join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, work session.
All right, we have two updates for you. The first is a budget update from Kim as we're getting ready for budget season. And so with that, I'll turn it over to her, and she does have a presentation that aligns to the budget update document, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So as we are definitely getting down to the nitty gritty and in the budget, I wanted to provide a report, essentially an update that gives some information on some of the key pieces when it goes into budget development. You know, there's a lot of talk about, budget and where it goes and what we fund, and that is absolutely critical. But it is absolutely critical that we clearly communicate what are the assumptions that we are making on those revenues? What are we assuming we're going to have as far as cost increases? And so before we get into absolutely, releasing the budget document, I wanted to walk through a few things with you here tonight. So on our, do you mind pulling up my slideshow?
Yes.
Thank you. So we had
It's not on your.
I'm sorry, I emailed it to you before. I'm so sorry. I had not linked it yet. So the state forecast actually that came out in March was actually more positive than some of the projections were looking to be. The economic growth is looking good. There's a lot of things that are looking very positive. One of the things that's lagging behind a bit is job growth. Unemployment is up and higher than.
Sorry.
Give me just a second.
Sorry.
Where are you at?
That right there.
There you go, all the way down there.
Nope,
No,
No,
presentation.
that's
No,
something
back.
completely different.
Second one down.
right there.
Thank you. So anyway, with job growth lagging a little bit behind some of the economic growth, basically what that means is that slower job growth, that slower wage growth means less income taxes being paid, which does put a little more strain on the funding for school funding. So, it's a tight, a steady economic outlook, but it is still going to be tight. Corporate tax, apologies to those who get hit with that, but the corporate activity taxes is, trending positive, if you will, in terms of revenues for the state. But basically just wanted to point out that we just need to make sure we're continuing to align our enrollment to our funding. So on the next slide, our funding level assumptions for this 26-27 budget. We're in the second year of the biennium. There was 11.36 billion put into the state school fund for the biennium. And the state splits that up 49% in year one and 51% in year two. And of course, the goal is you're going to have higher costs rather than doing a 50-50 split. Makes great sense. Unfortunately, as I've shared in previous budget updates, our share of that state school fund is declining, and that is directly tied to our enrollment declining slightly faster than the statewide average. So while our 26-27 state school fund is 51% of our biennial allocation, it's only a 1.3% increase because our share of that pie is continuing to slip. Now, even the 2025-26 number, we are 10 out of 12 months the way through the year. That is still an estimate for another 14 months. And the 26-27 number, of course, is an estimate until May of 2028. However, we do use these, and we are using these as our assumptions for state school fund. However, moving on, there has been some change in how the integrated plan grants, which are our most significant pot of grants, There's been a change in how those are funded, and they actually allow us to lock in at our enrollment as of the 2025-26 school year. So we are, in a sense, safeguarded for the second year of the biennium. So we are seeing the 4.1% increase in these grants. And as you can see, that is a very large amount of money that we rely on. And these primarily pay for staff. So this is a key positive, if you will, for us. 4.1% tight, but at least it's not 1.3%.
Question on the grants there, how long do they, what's the duration of them?
So these are biennial grants. Now, as far as the long-term duration, these are now in statute. So SIA is in statute. The student investment account, that is largely funded by the corporate activity tax. High school success has a little more fluidity in the volume of funding it gets. We do see some movement in that. And then the early literacy grant, I know that's a very prominent focus for our current governor. I do not believe it's in statute. So that is a very
Those we're not as sure.
And
that's
the
a good way to
employment,
put it.
Yeah.
is the employment tied to the grant then when you have these hires?
They,
Yes, yeah, and that's.
the position,
Position.
the position is tied to that.
Correct.
So
So,
if the funds go away, the position goes away.
correct.
Okay, thank you. You can carry on, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, well, appreciate the conversation on that. And that is, of course, the difficulty with grants is
Sure.
it's great when they're here, but if there happens to be a change in those, it impacts people. So absolutely.
And typically those people are hired, they are, because they're in coaching positions or different, they have seniority, so usually their space is still guaranteed. They would bump somebody that's of lower seniority if the grant suddenly went away.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So as we've been talking about funding, student enrollment, I just wanted to share a slide again that, our enrollment is trending downward. We're currently building our projections, our budget based on a fall 2026 enrollment count of 1,525 students. We used 1,581 for this school year. So really, this decline is largely driven by those graduating classes being that are leaving being just much larger than our incoming classes. Really want to emphasize, though, great positive that at this point in the school year already, we have 90 kindergartners already on the books. So if past year trends continue, we believe we could outrun the 89 student number. Until they're here in a seat and make it past that 10-day drop, we're very cautious, but that is great news based on our historical trends. So the big piece in budgeting right now is PERS rates. I know we all hear about this over and over, but it is such a large portion of our budget. So currently, for the current fiscal year as well as the next fiscal year, for this biennium, Senate Bill 849 was passed and has provided a 1.68% reduction to our rates for this biennium. So for our tier 1 and tier 2 employees, these are employees who had entered the PERS system many longer further back. Yes. So yeah, we have different rates because the pension structures are different for these different groups. So you can see what our rates, we were projected to have to pay 28.71% for tier 1, tier 2 this year. That 1.68 dropped rate credit dropped us to 27.03. This is just the pension side. This is not the additional 6% side that the district must pay to the individual account program, which is a supplement to a pension as well. However, in simple terms, we're seeing short-term relief in rates, but there are concerns coming. So back in 2003, North Marion purchased a bond or purchased debt service, bonded debt service, provided those funds to PERS, and PERS set up what's called a side account. And by having that side account, PERS gives us a discount, if you will, on our rate every single year. That side account, which means the discount in rate, is set to expire June 30 of 2027. So you're going to lose what we call a discount against our rates with PERS. And that would be great if our bond payments ended at the exact same time. They were not structured to have the rate credit expire at the same time the bond payments are done. So for the 2027-28 year, we must make over $800,000 in bond payments with no discount from PERS. So for 27-28 in blue, I'm showing our rates before the additional 6%. And then again, in 28-29, that bond will be paid off. So we will drop back down to, I'm projecting a 28.19%. We have two different bonds. There was one issued in 2021. I really would love to have an opportunity to talk with the board and make a presentation on what those bonds have meant for this district. I think it's important for our taxpayers to understand the value of PERS obligation bonds.
Yeah.
Right now, the market is not favorable to be looking at one maybe right now. However, that is going to be something that all districts are continuing to look at. It has saved the taxpayers of North Marion School District millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I would love to have a presentation in the future to show what that looks like.
So just so you know, we are not the only district that is facing that. All the districts that did that in 2003 are facing this exact same issue. So this wasn't like a North Marion mistake or anything. It
Sounds like
was,
it was a good thing.
it was a good thing.
Excellent.
The structure and the timing of it was poor design. And everybody, and a lot of districts went in on 2003. So everybody who bought those bonds in 2003 is facing the same thing.
Yes.
In a previous meeting, you had mentioned that sometimes these bond purchases are not favorable for the district.
There has been one issuance, they call them, I believe it was in 2007 or 2008, right before there was a big economic swing. And there was an issue, and unfortunately, because the performance was so poor in the first couple of years of the debt service, unfortunately, those districts are not going to see any savings. In fact, it is going to cost them. However, since 2003 to current, that is the only one issue that has not performed well.
And in that presentation that Kim would do, it would clearly indicate that it is a, you know, a risky, I mean, you'll have other people say that it is like gambling. You are taking a risk into this. However, indicators outside of the 2008 year have always proven. And we did decide to purchase into a study to see when might be a good time, and many other districts are looking, and it was a pretty inexpensive cost to say when might be a good time in the future to pursue this. And again, right now is not a favorable time, but
But it is a 3-year analysis. Over the next 3 years, they will continue to review that and let us know if there becomes an opportunity that the taxpayers could save again on these PERS costs, because they are not going away. So. All right, so also contracts and negotiations. I don't have a slide on that one, but I did just want to mention we have had excellent negotiations with our license group over the past few months. We have a contract with our classified association already set in place, and then working with the rest of our non-represented staff to get those in place. So currently, when you don't have a contract and you don't have a number to necessarily work with your budget, but we look forward to moving forward on that in the next couple of meetings. So as you kindly authorized Dan during our last meeting, we are very pleased to be working with First Student on a significant reduction in our increase for transportation for next year. That is another piece that is helping. Fortunately, that is a known cost, short of having to add specialized routes. At times, we may have students come into the district that require independent transportation, and that is a requirement that we are faced with. One piece too that, I just want to point out, and I picked 2 examples. Essential services, if we can go back one slide real quick.
Right.
Essential services, electricity and insurance are impacting all of us, every one of us personally, but also those of us, at the table. So while we absolutely want to do everything we can to help our staff, we also are having to manage this ourselves. Our electricity increases over 60% in these few years. Insurance premiums over 92%. And in that same time frame, revenue up 17%. So unfortunately, as it is for all of us in our personal lives, it's eating into the rest of our budgets, right? And that is, I am just wanting to make sure that we are doing everything we can, but we need to have lights on and we need to have insurance. So we'll turn the lights off when we leave. The estimated ending fund balance, as you've seen in your monthly financial reports, we are coming in way above our budgeted ending fund balance. That is absolutely great news and a testament to the hard work that everybody's doing to be really mindful of expenditures this year. But I want to be very clear that that projected ending fund balance looks positive, but we are going to need to use some of that savings in next year's budget to balance the budget. So if we end this year at a $2.4 million ending fund balance, I cannot balance a budget putting 2.4 million as next year's ending fund balance. So we are going to be bringing a proposed budget to you, but I just want to be very clear that without utilizing some of that savings next year, we would not be able to balance the budget. So we are continuing to work toward increasing that ending fund balance to the new board target. But when we bring you a proposed budget, we are going to be proposing a level below that target. Clearly, that's up to the budget committee and board to provide guidance, but we just want to be clear that those savings this year are going to help with minimizing disruptions for next year. So in summary, what's next? Budget committee meetings coming up very soon, and you'll have a budget message from Dan. We will present the proposed budget document. Public comment will be received and up for discussion. So if the budget is approved that evening, it will go to the board for adoption at the June board meeting on June 8th. If a second budget committee meeting is needed for any kind of revisions or changes, that will take place Monday, May 18th. So just want to be clear, there's a lot of positive, but there are some challenges in front of us. We are in a stable but just tight environment, and we are going to continue to make thoughtful decisions now so that we can prepare for the future and continue to serve our students and our families with everything we can. So, any questions?
Yeah. Well, I just wanna say, first of all, thank you for the extensive, reading material and all of the things that we have, because it really is important for people to have transparency and accountability into where their top dollars are going. But also, could you remind me how much the transportation amount was that's included in that ending fund balance? Was it how much for the 80% versus 79?
Oh, thank you, exactly. So currently about $280,000 of revenue is in that ending fund balance that could be handed back to the state next May,
Okay.
Yes, and so that will be another line item in the budget, that there will be a reserve that is not you have contingency funds that could be accessed by board authority. We also have funds that they need to be reserved. I can't make them not touchable, because if the state calls them back, I do have to be able to hand them back. But yes, we are making sure that will be called out separately too as well.
Okay, perfect.
Document. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
All right. So I sent you some homework on our strategic plan, and it really was to try to take a look at that document and divide it up a little bit. And so, what's that?
No.
Oh,
We're good.
so want to really get your feedback on the entire document if you would like to share feedback, but really the focus of your homework was the performance indicators and the strategic initiatives. And so on the student achievement side, Crystal and Merle, you were assigned student achievement, so I don't, Des and I haven't, we didn't have a. Like, here's how this conversation's gonna go, but really just wanted to get some feedback, some questions. From you before we move to finalize this.
Merle, you want me to go first or do you want to go first? Me? Okay. Under academic achievement, it's under strengthening core instructions in mathematics, there was purchase and use high quality instructional materials. When was the last time we bought? I should have probably submitted this beforehand, I apologize.
So you're good.
When's the last time we did mathematics?
That was like 2 years ago, so we're.
Good,
midway.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And all of the materials that we purchased at that time would fall under that quality, assurance of
Uh-huh.
high quality instructional materials. That term is something the state is really pushing on heavily.
Okay,
So we're gonna also make sure we use that lens if we need to buy any sort of materials to support. As
Okay.
we see intervention needs, for example, et cetera.
okay, excellent. And I apologize, I didn't tell you.
No, you're
That
good.
before.
I know it.
As I started, I was like, I should have probably said that. And then. The other piece that I had, I believe, sorry, I'm getting down there, was in metrics. I mean, thank you for being transparent, even though those are brutal. But did we have, like, how many times a year we would be seeing student achievement? Or did I just miss it?
So because of the different metrics, it will depend on the specific metric. So obviously our state testing metric will be once a year. And
Uh-huh.
then now with the new state requirement to do interim assessments, we will
Yeah.
do those 3 times a year, so we can
Okay.
add that data.
Okay,
So that's at the beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of the year. Those metrics will be gathered. We've talked with the cabinet. The state initially had said K-12 and then changed and moved it to K-8. We've been in conversations with other districts, and a lot of districts are moving to like a K-10, like a
Okay,
9-10.
yeah.
And when we looked at like, where are we missing data, that 9-10 makes the
Yeah.
most sense. Especially as we think about how the data can inform us in how we can help kids be more successful on those state tests. So if we can get that 9th grade data and that 10th grade data, and then their 11th grade year, they're getting ready for the state test. So that made a lot of sense. So right now, the quotes we have in to make purchases of the test that we have to do at this, like required by state, we're looking for 9th and 10th grade as well. And those
excellent,
will be 3 times a year.
okay,
I think one of the things is we probably haven't done quite as much data review this year as we did last year. I mean, and I think in part was we've been working on this
Right.
strategic plan and doing some other things. So I think Des has already put together some frameworks of what next year and the 3 years will look like in terms of what we need to be reporting, but I think it would be great in August or even in the board retreat to kind of, what does those data reviews at the board level need to look like, the frequency, where do we put them? Already place them on work session agendas so that we're bringing data to you, regularly.
And while we haven't necessarily brought that to the board for review, we have been collecting data this year, just like normal, and using that to inform our instructional practices and high dosage tutoring and different instructional kind of programming that we're doing at each of the schools. Specifically this year, we rolled out STAR because that was part of our district literacy initiative. We rolled that out K-8. So we've been using those assessments this year. I think we did that in middle school. Are we still using Fastbridge at the middle school? We may still be using Fastbridge. This is our last year. We'd already pre-purchased it when the state made their
You're right.
decision. So we have 1 year left of Fastbridge. Fastbridge and STAR though are owned by the same company and the data talks to each other.
excellent. Great, that was thank you.
Yeah.
Merle?
I hardly know what to say. Our superintendent mentioned quite some time ago that his comment, or I won't say mandate, but to the strategic planning people, I guess, that whoever is on the team, and a number of you are, that you would move toward conciseness, to paring down and not quite so large. And then I got the text and it said, this is huge. And I agree, it's huge, and I see what impacts me is all the time and energy that fed into this plan. And you've partly at least answered one question that was uppermost in my mind, and that is that the bureaucratic establishment requires certain languages, so.
Yeah.
And that was what I kind of came down on after my review, which certainly is not comprehensive. That there are so many adjectives describing the action verbs that I think we get lost. I Googled forest for the trees, and I don't know if it actually fits, but it does in measure. And I would still incline toward simplify if we can. And I had that thought and made note of it, that if I know there are bureaucracies and they expect a certain language, and it's not my language necessarily, but I've been through that with the US Department of Agriculture, and there's certain things that they expected to be on that document, so I understand that, and it's well written and it's professional, but I would still lean toward that.
Right.
I've probably mentioned before that I'm close to a certain person that doesn't use 4 words if 2 words will do. And just to confirm that, I checked my texts, and out of the last 9, 7 of them were 1 word. And I knew what they meant. The other 2 were 2 words, and I knew what they meant, but I don't expect us to do that, but.
Do we, going on that, I think this document is very well written, and all the documentation that's there is what I've seen before. So I think you can leave it. I wonder if you're worried about the page count, if we need every metric in there that was shared.
No, and in fact, Dan and I've had a lot, because I had the same thing, I was like, this thing is stupidly big for printing especially. Part of the reason why we shifted over to tabs is to think, what is the public facing document? And then what is the document that is the thing we use at a building level or at the teacher level to guide our work? And then what is the kind of addendum that, you know, when you want to look at that
Right.
data, and that those can all really live separately. So my plan after this initial review, and once we get it approved, would be to take the kind of the meat of the plan piece and make a public facing document that's pretty simple and stripped down to the point you're making. Then the pieces that we use that are more at the teacher level or the building level, because ultimately, while we've done a lot of this work, and it's really to the point you're making, Merle, like it's finding the balance between how do you say simply what we're doing, but also point out, I think there's so much work happening in our schools that because we don't get to talk about it, there's an assumption that maybe it's not happening. And so we really did try to find this balance between where do we say like, just trust us, we're doing the right thing, and where do we call it out and say, this is what we're doing. We have initiatives, we have programs, we're working continually on these things and looking to shift the data because of it and shift student achievement because of it. But how is that comprehensible for our community who just wants a good snapshot to know their kids are in the right spot, right? So finding that balance, and then, like I said, having it so like, if you wanna see the data, here's where you go for it, but it's not a natural part of it, especially because that data part, like that's right now data, as of today data. That will get bigger, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll add a line under each of those that's like, and the next wave of it, and the next wave of it. So you can see how those data points change, right? And those graphs will start including additional years and like, this is where we're at now, this is where we've come from. And so it will get bigger before it gets smaller in those ways. So finding that way so that we have an easy printable piece, but also we're constantly making transparent and available the data piece so people can see it.
I have no doubt you and Dan will do a great job.
Thank you.
But I certainly would welcome some, if there is language that is too, academia, I would welcome some feedback there. I mean, Glenn's not here, but he sent us some about a couple different things that said, I think this would be better worded a different way. So, and we want it to be, reader friendly, so we don't wanna be talking over the tops of people,
Yeah.
so.
Well, yes, you really touched on what I was thinking, because the phrase I used, you mentioned community, and I thought community and senior board members, and you need a certain language that we can understand.
Yeah.
But I also think of just the redundancy, or, you know, using a different word to say the same thing, and we have three of them, and you know, what is strong and what is rigorous and what is, you know, what is high quality, what defines it? They're rather subjective. And
Yes.
maybe the teachers know, and immediately that brings a picture to their mind. But for me, I don't necessarily know what is not high quality, or what is not rigorous, or what is ineffective versus effective, and so on. So I could make a list of my words just for fun, but I don't expect you to go with mine. And the data part, I like. I think that's more objective.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
say that's why men like math, because it's not a question. Talking about.
Now remind me, some of our language is directly reflected in some of our grant.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure, and to the point you're making, I think, you know, the pieces of it that can sometimes be hard. Like high quality instructional materials, such a good example, because, I couldn't right at this moment tell you what that means. You know, every subject area, it might mean something different. And it might mean something different every time they do a materials review. So anytime there's a 7-year rotation where the state looks at materials, they come up with a rubric, that team comes up with a rubric of what is high quality. And then they review the materials and give us scores and say, this one meets the high quality standard, this one doesn't. And sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. There are times where they say this is high quality materials, and then we have experience with those materials and we're like, but is it, you know, is that really what we're experiencing right now? So even that is sometimes so subjective. And so I definitely wouldn't want to put that in there, because it's just like, you know, it's very hemming and hawing on different things. And I think one of the things that I've really experienced since I came here as well is the concepts of like, and what does it mean for our community, right? Because there is this definite, the state can tell us this is high quality instructional materials. And we know what our kids specifically need. We can look at the data and say, these are gaps that our students have. Do these books intentionally address those gaps? And those are the lenses we really look through. So that's an additional layer of what makes something high quality. Does it look like our students? When we did our math adoption, actually, one of the things we really talked about is, you know, we live in this community. What does a math problem look like for kids who grew up here versus it looked like for someone who grew up in the city? You know, there was an example a few years ago where they were talking about like culturally responsive testing. And the example they would always give is that on the SATs, there was an analogy that was like yacht is to regalia as gala is to, and the kids were like, what is a yacht? You know, like, what is a gala? What is like a yacht party? You know, whereas our kids might understand something that's like, you know, a tractor is a two, you know, that piece of what is their lived experience. And so we really took that lens of like, are they using a bunch of examples that for our students is like, this isn't part of their reality? And we really took a lens to the books we picked because of that. Same with the English materials. I wasn't here for that, but I know it was a big driving force in their decision making. So that's even an additional layer that we put on. And I think for me, when we think about the strategic plan, it's then how do we use the strategic plan as a part of our storytelling that needs to happen afterwards? That we can put something simple like we're gonna adopt high quality instructional materials. Where that becomes meaningful is when we're adopting those materials, we're communicating with the community. This is the process we're using. These are the lessons we're learning. Here they are for you to look at. You can tell me if you think it's high quality or not. That's how that story becomes something real, not because it's, you know, strategic plans are as good as how they are lived. Otherwise, this will be in a binder on somebody's desk and not be a living document. So it will be how we communicate, how we talk about it. and how we reference back to it. We're talking about in high quality instructional materials, that is on goal performance indicator 3 on our academic achievement, here's what we're doing. And it's telling that story over and over and over again.
So you're bringing that into a narrower context,
That's right.
and then the high quality is more apparent. What it
Absolutely.
is and what it is not. I was going to say one other thing before I forget it, which won't take very long, so just interrupt me once and it'll probably be gone, but Jim Collins, I think he was the author. of-
Good to great.
Great.
Good to great.
But he said this, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any.
Mhm.
Thinking of the length of the document.
Oh, yes. I.
You want to see a short minute.
Right.
But I would also indicate that we have 3, student achievement, talent development, culture and community is our focus.
So if you just break down, Jenny and I had the opportunity to be part of this committee, and if you look at our vision for culture and community and then the statement after, and if you take each statement
Right.
from each one, you can really distill that down to see our vision for talent development, to develop and sustain a skilled, reflective workforce. The cool thing about it is if you really do this right, which is the goal that we had, when you're hiring, when you're firing, when you're disciplining students, when you're deciding as a district, what are we gonna do for sports? It's all in here and our goals are laid out, so we know what we do. We don't every time have to be like, hey, we're hiring X position, what are we thinking we need to do? This is all part of what we do, and so you do have to start out with something like a vision statement here, and then you have to add to it. Because without the adding to it, you don't have the depth of it.
And I would think, I'm actually, Greg McEwen wrote the book Essentialism, and he has the same thing. He said the word priority was never plural until it hit American culture, right? And then we pluralized it and we make it like, and now we have more than one priority, which actually goes against what the original definition is. I would argue that our priority is actually, we only have one priority, which is the education of kids.
Yeah.
Much like our own health though, like I could say like, my priority is my health. But if I only work on what I'm eating and I don't look at exercise and I don't look at my mobility, and if I don't think about how I'm exercising my brain, I'm still not healthy. So the goal can be one, and we only have one, educate kids. But we've got to do a lot of little things to get to that education of kids. So for me, our one priority goes back up to actually our mission and vision. And that's that piece of like, create those pathways for kids so that they can leave here and achieve that lifelong learning. All of these are the small tweaks to the system. They feel like lots of priorities, but in reality, it's the multiple actions we have to do to achieve that one priority.
Well, I did ask myself that question, and not every bullet point is a priority.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
So you're looking at maybe this slice, and maybe there is only 1 or 2 priorities there for this group of people and so on, but
Yeah.
I didn't get that far with it.
Well, if you saw the dry erase board on each side,
Oh.
where it went from and narrowed down to,
Yeah.
there was a lot.
Well,
And
Yeah.
If time permitted, I could have looked at the previous one and probably would have seen some differences.
Yes.
Admittedly, I'm a little bit more of a Monet than a Da Vinci, my vision is somewhat impressionistic, I have an impression, not necessarily a detailed view.
All right.
All right, moving to culture and community, Blake.
yeah, I reviewed it. I was fortunate to be a part of the process, so I don't have much to add to it. I feel like the meetings I came to were Jenny and I shared what our thoughts were during it, so if you want me to elaborate more, I can, but don't need to.
Okay. Jenny on talent development.
Yeah, I think I would just ask like on acquisition. What would we do differently after this strategic plan is implemented than what we are doing now? I mean, that's kind of a rhetorical question, but I do just kind of want to touch on what we were talking about earlier is like, I'm a person who likes the weeds, so I like that this document is big. I mean, it is narrow in the
Yeah.
beginning, but it is big and it tells you exactly what we're gonna do and how we're gonna get there and how we're gonna measure ourselves, which I think is even more important of how are we gonna measure, how are we gonna identify where we're falling short, what we're gonna do about it to correct it. that's where I like to see, and then I like your thought of this being a living document that we're gonna be adding to and updating as kind of our next 5 years. I don't disagree that maybe the community might like kind of like a one little
Yeah.
image, one pager, throw it in AI and see what that
Yeah.
spits out, but. Yeah, just like Blake said, I was there, I thought the conversations were productive and good and.
I think, you know, the big thing, and it goes right to what you just said, that I would see being different, one of the big pieces is actually the metric part of it. Because what we haven't done, some of the actions are not any different than what we may be currently doing. But what we haven't done is collect the data as to the effectiveness of those actions. And for like causation, to understand the causation of maybe the results we're getting, so that we can make those small tweaks to them. When I think about, you know, some of these, there aren't a lot, especially within the talent development. There aren't a lot of things that are like, oh, that's brand new for us, but we have not, especially within talent development, done much data collecting as of anything. And I think that's what I see the biggest tweak being. Dan?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, was really the data piece of this, because if you think about probably the most engaged conversation that we had this year is when we shared the Youth Truth data with you, and you saw some very stark numbers, and you were like, kind of, whoa, in certain areas. And we did do some responsiveness to some of those things, but the reality is I think there's a lot to, I think by having Youth Truth as in this really commits us to looking at it and doing something about it. And so I think it is more of that piece of, we've had this data, we've talked about it a little bit, but then it goes back, sits on the shelf, and what did we really do with it?
Right now, how will you use this for meetings that you hold with staff? Is it something that you're gonna break out the first 5 minutes to keep it live? Like there has to be ways that you're holding an assembly and you wanna, you know, just, we're having an event here at the school. How do you tie these pieces to the using this document to help not only have the reason you're doing it, but, you know, teach from it or connect that? It's just a thought on, so it's not put in a binder thing, so it's in 2031 and.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think some of Des has already kind of outlined what we want to get accomplished between now and July, when people break for the summer. What do we need to get done in August? Where do, you know, how, to the conversation we had earlier about how big this is, what do we share with staff on welcome back? And then how do we make this part of all of our principal meetings? Because I've said it before, I mean, these plans live and die with the principals.
That's right.
I'll just say that, because like, we can have all the work in the world or all the ideas, but it really lives with the principals and then executing it out through their staff. And so those plans are being developed and making sure that this is relevant to their work. And then we've got to be, as a leadership team, kind of keeping the focus narrow. So.
Sounds good.
We had a definitive moment with the principals the other day where we kind of said, don't get ahead of yourself planning, because your work will live and die through this document. And so this is not your time to be like, I have a pet project, I'm gonna go rogue with it. It's like, nope, if it doesn't live in the strategic plan, it doesn't happen, because this plan is big enough. It should take up most of your work from this point forward, and it is the right work to be taking up your time.
Absolutely.
One thing I noticed in the next section, what it is, the initiatives, that there is quite a long list of create, initiate, create, develop. And I thought, who is going to do all of that?
Raise your
It
hand.
seems pretty daunting to me, but.
Kind of banking on you, Merle.
Yeah. You know, yes, I will say some of it, and part of the reason why we added this section. This section specifically came out of two places. One is the strategic planning team had some really fantastic ideas, and we wanted to make sure that they didn't, because sometimes they were very specific, and we wanted to make sure that in the performance indicators, we kept it a general concept. So for example, use PLCs to improve instruction, right? But then within the actual strategic initiatives, we want to get to the specific, like, what does that actually mean? And make sure that those ideas that were generated by that strategic planning team were reflected in that work. Some of these things that are listed also are like, this is the work we're doing. So for example, right at the top, development of the district early literacy framework. We have to do that because we got a grant and we got money to do that. And development of the district literacy framework is also something we got money for. We have to do that work. So, and it directly supports the strategic plan. So let's call it out. Let's say we're already doing this work. And in fact, we've been recognized by the state for the work we're doing. Not in a bragging moment, but I think it's reflective of the good work this district is doing. I got an email today from the Oregon Council of English Teachers that was like, we'd like North Marion to sit on our board because you are being recognized. We're hearing about what you guys are doing and want you represented in the work we're doing at the state level. That's fantastic. Let's call it out in the strategic plan so people know about the work we're doing. So a lot of that development, those were things we were going to be developing otherwise. The rest of them that are kind of new are either things that have been on the burner for a long time, like creation of the district MTSS framework. I think that was one of Dan's initiatives, right, when he came in, was like, what are we gonna do about this? So there are things that have been in long time, like, let's get this going. And then the rest, I will admit, I'm just excited about, because it's the right word.
I was thinking about things like newsletters and communications.
Yes, yeah.
If I had to do that, I just don't know that I could do that.
Dad and I were having a conversation this morning, and I was like, okay, I'm getting really excited. I'm thinking about this. What do we do about that? You know, I have a list on my board around, like, literally, like, he comes in, it's like adds to our communication list. So there are things that are simmering that we know. Today was one of those weird days with stuff that came up where there was a lot of things where I think, at least in my head, I was like, communication would be helpful here, you know, and we started thinking about what are ways to enact these things. I think they're natural byproducts. You know, it is hard in a general sense that we are in a district, Kim and I were talking about this morning, where all of us at the district level especially wear probably 24 too many hats. At the same time, it's exciting work, and I think we've done a good job of understanding, like, when is done good enough, and where is the thing we really, like, this is the thing that's gonna move our needle, we're gonna put the effort here, right? So, but today we're working on a staffing report where done was good enough, but you can see her budget report is where we're gonna move the needle and she's gonna put the extra effort. We're good at that.
Development doesn't always mean from ground zero, though.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
No.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. But we are getting better even to that point, you know, we were having a discussion with the literacy coaches about the district literacy framework. And because we had developed the early literacy framework, we have a really good foundation with that. And because the state has developed a larger K-12 literacy framework, we were like, how much effort do we need to put into this, and where can we just steal? And take the good work and say, this is how it's actually gonna be enacted, and have it much more of an action-oriented document versus a think piece. And so I think that's the other piece we're getting better at, is knowing how to focus our energy.
Okay.
So there's no further feedback, and you're certainly welcome to email us individually. Our goal will be to bring back a finalized document for adoption at the May 11th board meeting.
And my goal would be to bring it in its different forms, so you can see what we put out for the community, what would kind of live on our web, how we're gonna push it out to our principals.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, executive session,
Yeah.
I'll read this into the record. We'll be going into executive session. The board will now meet in executive session according to ORS 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated to carry on labor negotiations, collective bargaining with UNME, Content discussed in executive sessions is confidential except as provided by law. Board members and the media are instructed not to disclose information obtained in executive session except when specifically authorized to do so or as required by law. The board will not be taking any action on the content discussed tonight and will adjourn following the executive session. Thank you. We'll do 2-minute break while we clear the room.